Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another reaction. And today we're here with the NFL's logistics problem. Now, I'm not too sure what this actually means because I don't actually know what logistics means. I guess it's to do with like stats and statistics, but I don't know. But you guys wanted me to see it, and again, whatever you guys suggest, I'm going to react to. But yeah, I'm not too sure what to expect. But without talking too much, let's just get into it. I guess logistics, like I'm guessing it is to do with stats. I just don't really know what else it could be.
This video was made possible by Skillshare. Learn from over 25,000
You guys seem to
classes
be
for free
really
for
enjoying
2
these sort of
months
like
at skl.sh/windover6.
statistics videos, etc. Like to do with not to do with actual gameplay, but to do with more like learning about the sports, etc. And sort of learning about more than just insane runs, insane touchdowns, etc. You actually like me seeing these more in-depth videos, which I really enjoy watching because they are like really informative.
No sports league in the world makes more money than the American National Football League.
I find that crazy.
The NFL earns more yearly revenue than the English Premier League, the Champions League, Formula One, the Japanese Nippon Professional Baseball.
Oh wow, it gets more than the Champions League as well. Yo, it's literally double the Premier League. Wow.
League and the Continental Hockey League combined. It is by far the largest sports league in the world by revenue. Making up the NFL are 32 football teams, each themselves essentially acting as their own distinct businesses. These teams are spread out all across the contiguous United States, some only 30 miles.
Oh, it's logistics to do with location. Now what says that? I'm gonna guess it. My guess is gonna be it's to do with location.
45 kilometers apart from each other, some nearly 3,000 miles or 4,500 kilometers apart. Now, American football teams are some of the largest in sports, both physically and in numbers. They have a roster of 56 players, the majority of which play in any given game. These players weigh on average about 250 pounds or 110 kilograms. This team size leads to some particular travel needs. Players each require a first-class seat, or, at the very least, the seat next to them free in economy, meaning those 56 players take up far more than 56 seats. On top of that, a team typically brings more than 100 support staff and an immense amount of cargo to each away game. With the exception of the largest, most valuable ones, most other professional sports teams in the US will just fly on chartered narrow-body aircraft like A320s, 737s, or 757s. But most NFL teams, given their size, require something larger. NFL teams tend to charter their aircraft from commercial.
So because of how big the players are and how many players there are in a team, they literally have to get bigger
airlines. American, Delta, United.
I guess you don't really think about that sort of stuff.
Typically fly something a bit larger than other teams, like a 767,
especially the distances they have to travel.
But the nature of this charter job makes finding a plane to take them particularly difficult. You see, let's take the example of the New York Jets' last game of the 2018 season versus the New England Patriots on December 30th. For this game, they left the day before on a United Airlines 767-400 at 3:37 p.m., landing 30 minutes later at 4:07 p.m. in Providence, Rhode Island. The plane then sat on the ground at Providence Airport for the next 26 hours until the game was over. The following day, the plane took off at 6:30 p.m. bound for New York. The aircraft's previous flight had been to Buenos Aires, and its next flight was to London. But for these 26 hours, United only made money from the half-hour charter flight to and from Providence. It's easy to understand why this wouldn't really be worth it to the airline, but at least the jets are located next to a United Airlines hub.
So do the NFL teams pay them extra then? Because surely they have to like sort of make up what they've lost in those previous hours of not traveling. I'm guessing that's the case.
Many teams, like the New Orleans Saints for example, are not located in a city with any airline hub. That makes finding an airline to take their charter contract even more difficult. That's because, for example, when the team had to travel to Charlotte last season, the 767 that took them had to fly in empty from Houston, the nearest United hub, then fly to Charlotte, sit on the ground for 33 hours, fly back to New Orleans, then once again fly empty, this time all the way to New York. All told, for those 2 hours and 51 minutes of flight time United was paid for, they used this airplane for almost 44 hours.
Well, oh, so they do,
away from an airline hub.
Look at that stadium, man.
Means charter flights will
that is the craziest stadium I've seen in the sport. I did do a reaction video on stadiums, but this one is something.
Always require a plane flying in empty. It is for this reason that airlines are raising rates or just flat out stopping flying NFL teams.
When it says empty, I'm guessing it doesn't mean gas, it means passengers in it. Because originally I thought, okay, so it's running on low fuel for until it gets to New York, but I guess that just wouldn't be the case because that wouldn't be safe. So when it says empty, I'm guessing it means without any passengers.
Find normal commercial flying a more lucrative use of their aircraft. American Airlines in recent years, for example, dropped all the many teams they previously flew except for the Carolina Panthers, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles,
wow.
3 teams located at their hub airports. More teams have moved their contract to dedicated charter companies such as Atlas Air or Miami Air International, while the New England Patriots even bought their own set of planes to solve this issue.
Oh, wow.
Some teams still have contracts with commercial airlines, but have switched to flying multiple smaller planes as these can be in less demand. The Indianapolis Colts, for example, now typically travel in 2 Delta 757s, leaving within a half
Jesus,
hour.
I didn't realize how
Other
difficult it
American
would
sports,
be.
such as hockey,
You
baseball,
think it's easy to forget how big the US is. Like the country that I live in, yeah, it's probably the size. It's probably half the size of Texas. England, because the UK is obviously seen as a country, but the country that I actually live in is England, and that's even smaller than the UK. And to think that travel here is seen as hard because it's like 500 miles up, 250 miles across. But then the US is, oh my god, it's insane.
basketball don't have nearly
The size of
as
this
much of a
country is
problem
scary.
because they play far more games this season, which makes their contract a more attractive one to airlines, and they also typically use smaller aircraft, of which there are more available. The NFL briefly considered investing in its own fleet of aircraft or at least negotiating a deal with an airline in bulk, like the NBA does with Delta, but for now, NFL teams are seeing their travel costs skyrocket as the laws of supply and demand take hold. After losing their contract with American Airlines, for example, the Jacksonville Jaguars saw their travel costs double to $4 million a year as they chartered an Atlas
$4
Air
million, bro.
747. And remember, those $4 million pay for the travel costs to a mere 8 away games. But the NFL's
That is
most daunting
nuts.
logistics
For
problem
8.
is not
For 8 away games, it costs £4 million. Oh my
this.
god.
Their most daunting logistics problem relates to the NFL's other big problem: expansion. You see, part of the reason the NFL is the most valuable sports league in the world is because of how saturated the football market is in the US. 57% of Americans identify as NFL fans.
Wow.
That's an amazing level of market saturation for what is, at its core, a business, but that also presents a problem because, with such a high proportion of the
That's
population
low.
already
That's
fans,
probably like, what, so the US is like, is it, I might be wrong, I'm going to say 300 million. So that's about 170, 180 million in just the US.
it's quite difficult for the NFL to expand their audience, at least within the US. In the past decade or so, the league has turned its
Yeah.
attention internationally. The NFL now plays regular season games in Mexico City and London. These cities don't have home teams, but rather, 2 teams from the US will come out and play. For the most part, these international games are about promoting the sport in these 2 countries which already have significant fan bases watching the sport on TV. There's never been more than 1 game a season in Mexico City, but in London, in the 2019 season, they're playing 4
4?
regular season games.
I didn't even know
With
that
the
was
16
4.
regular season games per team per year, any other city that has a resident NFL team typically only has 8 home games, meaning London's quantity is really not that far off.
Oh,
What's
wow.
more, the Jacksonville Jaguars are designated as a sort of home team for London and therefore play at least one of their games there each year in an attempt to give the city and country a clear team to root for. The league has even said that it plans to eventually have a full 8 games per season in London,
Okay.
same as any home city in
I didn't know it was that big
the
here
reason
then.
there are now so many NFL games in London is because the sport of American football has gained significant inroads in the UK audience. The NFL estimates that it has 13 million fans in the UK, 4 million of which watch regularly, and 47,000 of which buy games to every single NFL game in the UK. Its
Jeez.
dedication to the UK has become so significant that it contributed $12.5 million to the construction of the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Oh, did it? Because yeah, I'm guessing you guys were. There were a few of you who know about this, but there's this stadium. It's a soccer stadium, and it's for a soccer team. They've got this. It's probably going to explain in this video, to be honest. But they've got this like football pitch, and they can literally like, get it off with. It's like on a metal. I don't even know what to say it, but like it can just move off, and underneath the soccer field is an NFL field, and it's just crazy. The sort of technology that's been involved in this stadium is
North
scary.
London. This recently opened stadium was built to become the home of the NFL in the UK. It has a permanent synthetic American football pitch under its grass soccer field, purpose-built NFL-sized locker rooms, and a media suite built to the preferences of NFL press. In the coming years, at least 2 NFL games will occur each year at this stadium. Now, the logistics of these international games in London are formidable. When the Seahawks played in London in 2018, they had to ship 1,150 rolls of athletic tape, about 4,000 pounds or 1,800 kilograms of medical supplies, 350 power adapters, 500 shoes, 240 pairs of socks, and tens of thousands of other pounds of equipment to
Oh
the
my
city
God.
weeks ahead of their arrival. Months before, they had to arrange for many of their players who had never left the US to get passports. The team's trainers
wow.
had to carefully schedule their players' sleep in the week leading up to reduce jet lag. There's even a hotel in Watford with a purpose-built American football practice pitch that teams typically stay in. While these London matches come at
Didn't realise how much effort goes into travelling around the world for these players.
great difficulty and
makes you
forced
really
to sacrifice
realise.
a coveted home game, the teams and their owners seem to tolerate them given their infrequency and the promise of the UK market. But the promise of the UK market could push the NFL to stretch beyond 8 international series games a year there. You see, there is some very real, very serious discussion of putting a National Football League team in London.
I really hope this happens. I did another video on this another time, and I said I really wish that this did happen because this would be really exciting. Then I could see from, and you guys seem to actually be for it. You thought it would be quite a good idea. It just would be quite difficult to do. But I know there's always in every sport there's like the traditional fans who just want it in their own country. But just from someone who I'm going to be honest, I'm not like prior to when I started reacting to this, I wasn't like an American football fan. I just occasionally watched the Super Bowl when it was on terrestrial TV because it was free and it was just on. But like, if they actually made a team there, I genuinely think it'd be sick. Which is, I don't know if you know what sick means. It's just a really good idea and really that the potential for it could be incredible.
There's little doubt that the city and country could support a team in terms of fan base. The issue, according to the league's commissioner, would be having one solitary team stationed more than 3,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers away from the next. It would be an immense logistics problem considering that, for the weekly games, teams would have to take flights as long as 11 hours crossing up to 8 time zones. On the flip side, this London NFL team would have to travel continuously throughout the US for weeks at a time since, practically, it wouldn't make sense for them to return to London between the weekly games.
Exactly, yeah.
This would come at enormous expense, would likely impact their performance, and prove unpopular with their players. In addition, as the UK does not yet have significant American football talent, the majority of this team's players would come from the US and would need to be persuaded, either monetarily or otherwise, to live outside their home country. Those are just some of the cost problems.
I guess there's a lot of
Beyond that,
difficulties for
it
it.
is not cheap to fly a whole NFL team over the Atlantic every week. For the International Series games, teams were flown on chartered Virgin Atlantic 747 or A330s arranged by the league, but if London had a fully fledged NFL team, it would likely be treated just like any other team, meaning both them and their American competitors would have to arrange their own flights. The wide-body planes teams would have to charter to cross the Atlantic come at a cost of up to $50,000 per flight hour. That means that transatlantic travel costs, just in terms of the flight, would be anywhere between $650,000 for an East Coast team or up to a full $1 million for West Coast teams.
Is that how expensive it is to
Teams also tend
fly?
carry tens of thousands of pounds of cargo to each away game, which would further escalate the cost. While such an expense would be little issue for large, wealthy teams like the Dallas Cowboys or New England Patriots, teams with smaller budgets like the Detroit Lions or Cleveland Browns would certainly have more of an issue with potentially adding an extra $1 million in travel costs. But this level of team isolation is not unprecedented. Further west, in the middle of the Pacific, the University of Hawaii has a Division I college football team, the Hawaiian Rainbow Warriors. The closest team in their conference is 2,600 miles or 4,200 kilometers away in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
To get there, they take a 5-hour flight. That's only an hour or two faster than it would take a London NFL team to get to its closest competitor, the New England Patriots. While the furthest team in the Rainbow Warriors Conference is only a 7 or 8 hour flight away in Colorado Springs, Colorado, they do play a number of non-conference games each year which take them all the way to the US East Coast, an up to 10-hour flight away from Honolulu, which is almost exactly the same as the longest required travel time for an NFL team to London.
This is a
Not
really
only
good
that,
video,
but
by
the
the way.
Hawaii Rainbow Warriors also have to balance their time with class schedules, which means that they travel to their away games far closer to kickoff than NFL teams typically do to London. The Rainbow Warriors regularly rack up more travel miles than any professional football team. For example, in one particularly grueling month in 2016, the team started its season with an international match in Sydney, Australia, then the next weekend played in Ann Arbor, Michigan, then the weekend after that played in Tucson, Arizona, meaning they flew 25,000 miles or 40,000
Wow.
kilometers in just one
The
month.
distance you have to travel in this sport must be so painful. I'm guessing that's why there's two. Like there's the NFL, but there's the east. There's the east side and the west side. Like, and there's like two different divisions, and then when they get to the playoffs, they start playing each other, right? Or am I wrong? I think that's
The
it.
Rainbow Warriors also make most of their trips on commercial flights, making their travel even more difficult than that of NFL teams. Now, this does potentially give the team a more significant home field advantage since they're used to playing with jet lag while their opponents, when they fly to Hawaii, would not be, but it also supports the view that, logistically, it would be possible to add an NFL team in London. There are even professional sports leagues that already regularly require travel over similar or
Yo, this
greater
weekend I'm so
distances.
excited.
The Continental Hockey League, for example, has teams spread out all across Asia and Eastern Europe, meaning the teams from Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, and Beijing regularly have to travel more than 4,000
I've never even heard about this league.
kilometers to play the teams from Minsk, Riga, and Helsinki. An even more extreme example would be Super Rugby, which has teams spread out across Japan, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. With this, when the Tokyo Sun Moles play the Buenos Aires Jaguars, for example, they have to travel more than 11,000 miles or 18,000
Oh my
kilometers
God.
each way to their match. Part of the NFL's problem is just the pure scale of their competitions, with many tens of thousands of pounds of equipment and many hundreds of staff traveling to each game. The problems are surmountable, though, at a cost, but this cost would be partially burdened by every other team in the league. The question is then, given the promise of adding a whole new country to the league, is the cost worth it? Now, if the NFL expands to London, one of the first things the new team will need is a logo. Luckily,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a class on Skillshare for that.
Damn it.
Professional animators
Come
featured
on,
in
you
the
don't
team will
finish
actually
it like that. You don't-
teach you something that you
I was excited to see what they could suggest for the logo. This was a really good video. I'll tell you what, this was a really, really good video. And it does like bring up the idea. Like, I genuinely think it would be so cool to have a London team. Like, it'd just be exciting to have like a team to support who's somewhat local. Like, London is like 2.5 hours from me. And in the UK, 2.5 hours is seen as quite a long distance. I guess in the US, if I was 2.5 hours from, say, New York, you'd think, oh, that's well close. You can just get there. You can definitely support that team. They're your local team. But yeah, it just shows the difference in the countries, really. But I mean, yeah, again, this is a really good video, and I really like appreciate the suggestion. And if there's any others like this, for sure, I'd love to react to them. But yeah, man, without talking too much, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.